you think Fed will use CBDC to try to regulate bank lending with digital currency fractional reserve requirements? No. I think this is a great question, Nathan. But I think this is how should I say this? I think this is a fundamental misunderstanding of how a central bank digital currency would work. And this is a great question. And so many people think that a CBDC is just some alternate currency that's going to compete with the dollar. It's going to be Fed coin. It's just, yeah, people get really confused on this, and understandably so. But you've got to realize a CBDC, my shirt here, is really just you or the retail, the individuals, the entities in the real economy having an account with the Fed. So when will you know there's a CBDC? They're not going to come out, in my opinion, they're most likely not going to come out and announce it because they know there's a lot of bad PR around a CBDC. So when you'll know they have a CBDC, regardless of what they call it or don't call it, they might not even call it anything, is when they start inviting individuals to take their dollars from Wells Fargo and move them over to the Fed. And so just imagine there's a banking crisis. Depositors are taking a haircut because the deposits exceed what the FDIC can handle, and therefore they come in. There's this crisis, and they say, "Hey, we've got a solution. What we need to do to make sure that we can insure these deposits and to make the depositors whole, because there's not enough FDIC to cover it. We can just take the liabilities, those deposit liabilities from Wells Fargo, and we can just move them over to the Fed's balance sheet, and then we don't have to worry about it because the Fed can't go bust." And I would imagine that even a lot of people that are adamantly opposed to a CBDC under those conditions and presented that way would say, "Oh yeah, this is great. Yeah, no brainer. Why do I want my currency units with Silicon Valley Bank when they can go bust? I'm just going to move them over to the Fed. Then I don't even have to worry about this. And I can get back to business. I can get back to taking my kid to soccer practice and watching Monday Night Football and yada, 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 yada." But for those who understand the nuance here, they realize that that is a central bank digital currency once that happens. And that's a huge blind spot for most people. And that's why I kind of pound the table and try to encourage people to split these hairs, because I think the devil's in the details. And I strongly believe that we could go through a scenario where, even though the majority of Americans are completely opposed to a CBDC, we get one anyway, because what the Fed does, those people don't even realize that is a CBDC, because they think it's this alternate currency. They don't even realize that, no, it's just your dollar liability is being an asset of the Fed, or excuse me, liability of the Fed. And there's a couple other variables, or a couple other components that would be required for that CBDC, or the mechanics of that, what most people consider a CBDC, in order for it to have the impact and for it to give the central planners the leverage that they would want to create this Orwellian type of utopia. There would be a few other things that would be required, but I don't want to get into that here. That's the main component, though. So to answer your question, would bank lending be fractional reserve? No. Probably that's another way they'll try to sell it to you, is that from now on, that eliminates fractional reserve banking. Because you see, with fractional reserve banking, that means they're lending out more than the bank reserves they have, right? Because there's a difference between base money and broad money. Well, if everyone's dollars were a liability of the Fed, you see what they're doing there? They're merging base money and broad money. So if they're merging base and broad, if those two are literally one and the same, there's no more fractional reserve lending, because what the Fed would be creating if they're issuing a mortgage, a car loan, whatever, would be actual bank reserves. And so if they're, let's say, creating a loan for $500,000, they're just taking those $500,000 in bank reserves, putting them into the account of the borrower, and then that goes to the seller, and they have an account with the Fed. There's no fractional reserve there. It would be full reserve banking. And it's very, not to knock on Andrew Yang, but remember when he was running for president and he was trying to pitch that whole UBI thing by saying that this isn't my idea, this is Milton Friedman's idea, trying to make it seem as though he was a real free market guy, Andrew Yang, when of course he took what Milton Friedman's idea and completely distorted it. But I think that the central planners would do something similar. All you gold guys, all you Tucker Carlsons, all you Bitcoin people, you listen, you sit there and say how you want sound money, how you hate fractional reserve banking. well, look, this is the solution. If we just move all the liabilities over to the Fed's balance sheet, now we have a banking system that can never go bust, and we have full reserve banking. You Austrians should absolutely love this. See how easy a pitch it is? And for people who aren't paying attention, even Austrians, even gold guys, Bitcoin guys and gals, they might, if they're not paying attention, they might be like, yeah, let's do that. That's great. As long as it's not a CBDC, because I don't want that, not even realizing that that's what they're signing up for. That's why it is so important to understand the plumbing of the financial system. That's why it's so important to understand these mechanics and how they actually work behind the scenes. One of the many reasons.